So hello everybody, this video tutorial is designed to help students or beginners with Unity 2D learn how to make their characters automatically pace. I'll give you an example here. So in my particular game, I've got it to where my character Mario can move left and right using the keys on the keyboard or a gamepad. But how do I make it to where I automatically have characters in my scene, such as a turtle, automatically pace from one side of the screen, and eventually he'll turn around here in a second. Let me get him to turn around. Come on, turtle. There we go. Sometimes he needs a little shove. And as soon as he gets to one section, he will turn around and come back. Another example of this is maybe we have a flower that will move up and down. Now this video is not going to walk through, at least in this part, how to inflict damages upon these collisions. I've got a 3-part series on collisions specifically that would cover this, and you would just apply a box collider in your collision script to your character and your flower here, and it would work the same as in that 3-part series. Again, this is just to focus on how do you get characters to automatically pace without any user control from the keyboard. So you can see my little characters here are automatically moving, and when it gets down there to the other end, he eventually will turn and come back. I also have another tutorial if you want to cover, how do you kill an enemy character. That's a whole different tutorial. So let's get started. What I've done here is I have added a turtle graphic into my scene. So I have some kind of an enemy character you can use. I don't have the character set to animate. That would be really nice, but I wanted to keep this tutorial simple to just pacing a character. So what my character has over here, of course it comes with a sprite renderer. If you don't have sorting layers set up, you don't need to worry about it for right now, but if you do, I set my character to the foreground so it's in front of all my artwork in the back. Rigid body is going to be necessary for my character because I want my character to be able to move, and rigid body 2Ds are responsible for moving items, whether automatically or with keyboard button movement. Again, they just make the movement possible. They don't actually make the movement. That would be with the script. I've added a box collider so that my turtle, when it hits something, say a sewer pipe, it doesn't just walk right through it. Then I also have a box collider set to is trigger so that if I wanted to be able to determine if it collided with anything, it could inflict damages. I have a health script, which is another tutorial video, but you don't necessarily need a health script for this tutorial. But again, this script just makes it so that if I shoot my character, it dies. So Mario can throw a fireball at him and he dies and disappears off the scene. The one we will be making here is a turtle pace script. So in your project folder, go into your scripts folder, right click and say create C# script, and I called mine turtle pace so that I would know in my folder full of scripts which one's responsible for making my turtle pace. My flower, I made another one called flower, I think, let's see, can't hardly see it in this view. I think I called it flower up down script because it's going up and down, it's not really pacing. So I try to name my scripts something that is going to be easy for me to understand long term down the road what it was for. Once you make your turtle pace script, go ahead and drag and drop it onto your turtle in the hierarchy. You select your turtle, you can drag and drop it over on top of your turtle, or this is a little bit more difficult, but you can drag it below the add component button and it will also make it show up there. Okay, go ahead and double click on your turtle pace script, and let's get into what the logic is behind it. Not a very lengthy script at all. Actually, I'll tell you what, let me back up for 1 second. I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 other things we're going to need, the way I did it, is I made an empty game object called turtle left to right. So there's an empty object here with the box collider on it, and I made one called turtle right to left over here so that when my character hits it, it turns around. How do you make invisible box colliders? We just go up to the empty menu and say create empty, and then I give it a name. So this would be the point where you would say left to right. And you can call it whatever you want. I just again try to come up with names that make sense. So I'm calling it left to right so that when he hits him, it turns my character from left back to my right side, moving towards the right. And then all you're going to need over here is a box collider. This item is statically going to stay on the screen, and it doesn't need to move, so no need for a rigid body. I'm not even going to need to put a script on it because my script will be on my turtle. Okay, so I put one called left to right, and then with that selected, I just duplicated my left to right one and then renamed it right to left and positioned my right to left empty object wherever I want my character to turn around. Okay, I'm going to delete out my extra one here so I don't have confusion later. But again, I have a right to left over here because I want him to turn around when he gets near the pipe. And I have a left to right over here so that he turns around when he reaches the edge of the screen. Okay, so those are the two things I forgot before we get to the script. Let's move over to the script. And at any point now would be a good time if I'm talking too quickly or if you want to pause and copy down some script. This is a great time to press pause in the video. So what I've done here is I've made a variable up here called movePlayerVector. That is going to be the variable that will determine whether or not there is any input from the user. Okay. Now I'm going to kind of trick the program here. Rather than collecting it from the keyboard or a gamepad, which gives me values anywhere between -1 and +1, I'm just going to give it a 1 and not even try to collect it from the keyboard. Okay. I have a second variable here called float speed. I made it to where it's -1 so that my character starts off automatically moving towards the left. Again, and then another reason why I like using -1 is because it's easier to use mathematically for me. If I choose -1, then all I have to do is multiply that variable in the future by another -1 in order to get it to reverse. Whereas if I have a 1, it can get a little trickier. Up to you, but I would just recommend making it a -1 for now. I need a private rigid body 2D object variable here, and that is because I'm going to need to connect to my rigid body in Unity and be able to move it or apply physics forces to it. In my start function, I activate my rigid body 2D from Unity in code. I have a void fixed update function. Fixed update checks on a much more frequent basis than just update. So I go in here and I say, hey, make my movePlayerVector variable equal to a 1. This is normally for a lot of game players where they would say input.getKeyDown or input.getAxis or something like that to determine if it's a -1 based on which arrow key or button they're pressing. I'm just going to set it to a +1 because I'm not going to let the user determine if my turtle moves. It's going to automatically move. Then on the second line here, I say what my velocity for my turtle is going to be. I make that equal to a new vector variable, and you'll see there's a comma right here. The comma separates the X value over here and the Y value over here. The X value is going to move, that's why there's an equation here, taking my movePlayerVector and multiplying it off of whatever speed I choose. So since my character's moving left and right, I want my math to be applied on the X value. This over here is Y, and the Y, there's no equation, which means just take its current velocity of 0 and leave it at 0. So I could put a 0 in there if I wanted to. I leave it open in case I want to change it later. So Y is not going to change. That's why you don't see any kind of an equation here. Again, that's all in fixed update. Then we get into our void onTrigger collision function, and this is where we detect whether or not our turtle has collided with my turtle left right empty game object. So this right here is checking to see if empty game object was collided with, and this one down here is doing the same thing. So I'm saying if you collide with the left object, then take my -1 speed and multiply it by a -1. So a negative times a negative gives me a positive, so now my character will move to the right. I've also said I want to add in a flip function to flip the artwork around so that he's not just walking backwards. I also say, hey, later on, else if, meaning only one of these can be true, if he's collided with the right object, the right empty game object, then multiply his +1 by a -1 and flip his artwork again. So now he's going to move to the left. Okay. This here is something just a little bit extra, but I'm making it to where if I hit another turtle or two turtles cross each other, one turtle falls off the screen because his collider is no longer set to enabled so that they can cross paths. Lastly down here I have a flip function, and I will talk about the flip function and continue with this tutorial in the next video.